You're linking up in space. It's like takes a lot to get you guys educated these days. All right, welcome, welcome to CS411. It's 411, right? Awesome. Welcome to CS411. Looks like we got about 70 something online. We've got a dozen in here. I believe there's 120 in the course. And by the way, congratulations on getting a seat to all of you. The last time I looked, there were about 240 on the wait list. Yeah, it's insane. Just insane. It's a cult of personality, clearly. Everyone just wants to be in my courses for some reason. Actually, the reason 411 is so freaking popular, I think, is that I assume you guys can see me on Zoom. Can you guys see me on Zoom? Camera? See you? Somebody say yes?
Yeah, we can see
Hey,
you.
sure. Yeah, nice. Sweet. Looking good all the time, Bernard. All right. So the reason I think the 411 is so popular is that it's one of the few courses in the curriculum where you actually get to do something. Like, I mean, it's a computer science degree, right? Even though it's a Bachelor of Arts, which is kind of weird. I never quite understood that. And because it's a science degree, it's just a lot of theory. Like you guys are, up to here in theory, right? Well, I guarantee you when you get out on the job, if many of you are going to go and get a job at some point, they don't care about how much theory you know. And it happened to me too. So like I was an engineer. My degrees are in electrical engineering and computer science, but fresh out of computer science school, I'm walking into an employer, my first real computer sciencey sorts of job, and it's like, oh, we need you to work on this, and I covered the wall with stickies, like how can I optimize this, and what are all the graphs, how I like did the full analysis. And my boss walks in, he goes, what the hell are you doing? It's like, oh, you have to understand the problem before you can approach it. He's like, this has to ship on Friday. Like, we don't have time for yellow stickies all over the wall. And that's sort of how it goes. Like, you don't get a lot of practical experience in this curriculum. 411 offers some of that. And so folks, just line up down the street to get into the course. I like to think it's me, but it's really that you get some practical experience. And some of the reason is, like I said, I'm an engineer and computer science guy. I'm not a theoretician at all. I'm not an academic, really. Like, I'm giving you all my secrets. So I joined this department 6 years ago or so, the CS department here at BU, this CS department, but I've taught here at BU for 22 years. And the first 16 of those years, I was teaching as an adjunct lecturer at Met. And if you know Met College down the street at the Buick building, like it's a very, it's focused on adult learners who already have a job and they're picking up a master's degree, maybe a bachelor's in some other topic or something. So it's very practical, that curriculum. And I taught there for, 15, 16 years, and then came over here. It was just perfect timing. It's like, it was one of those things where I was running a publishing business at the time. Like I've done all sorts of things in my career. I was running a publishing business, and I don't know if you've done any business planning, but typically we plan out for 5 years. So there's initial startup ramp, then you're sort of steady state for a couple of years, and at some point, depending on your niche, you're going to see the other side of that curve as interest drops off, the market moves. And so I was sort of in that fourth and a half year of that curve. Like, we'd done really well for 2 or 3 years, and then it was starting to tail off, and I kind of saw the writing on the wall. And just then, like, as a miracle, Professor Matta called me up on the phone. I had never met the man, and he goes, hey, my friend Anatoly over at Met tells me you've taught a couple of CS courses. And it was true. I've taught almost all of the CS courses over there. I said, yeah. And Anatoly's insane. I don't know if you know Anatoly Temkin. He's the chair over at Met. He's insane. He claims he discovered me. Uh, anyway, so it's like, yeah. And he says, well, we have this software engineering course that's vacant. Like we're looking for somebody to pick that up, or would you be interested? And my initial thought was, hell no, because I had taught this course before it met, and it was my least favorite course. I hated this course. I taught it. We did a lot of like work with industry out of Met. So I taught it up at Wang. Well, it was the Wang Institute at the time, but it was basically MITRE Corporation. MITRE, if you know them, down in Burlington, like they're just serious propeller heads. And I had a class of about 10 people. They hated me. I hated them. Like they didn't want to be there. I didn't want to teach it. It's like, it was just horrible, like a horrible course. And so I vowed I would never teach this course again in my life. And when Matta called up and said, hey, would you like to teach software engineering? I said, yeah, absolutely. This semester, because I really, really, really wanted to get into this department. I didn't care what I taught. I just wanted the foot in the door. And it all worked out. Like I, came on part-time for a semester and then just pushed it and said, hey, like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. Let's make this permanent. And it takes, well, if you know anything about academia, it takes like a year to get a job in academia. So I spent like 6 months doing interviews and all of this stuff. And finally they say, yeah, you're hired. You're part of the department. And then I was like, woohoo, call my mom. But then they hand you a contract and it's only for a year. You get a 1-year contract, and then you have to go through the whole thing again. So after a year, 2 semesters of teaching, I had to do the whole interview process again, compete for the job. It's silly. I don't know why they do that, but I got it. Woohoo! I called my mom again. So that's how I came here. All of that to say that most of my career has been in industry. A big chunk of that as a consultant here in town, in the financial services and healthcare industries, mainly financial services. So my clients were Fidelity, State Street, Citizens, Pioneer Investments, Wellington Management, Bank Boston, like those guys, doing systems level stuff for them, sort of back end kinds of things. Fidelity was my biggest client. I spent the most time there, mainly in the retail side at Fidelity. And if you know that industry, retail means basically stock trading. So if you're doing trades, if you're doing research, if you go on fidelity.com and hit the research tab, a lot of that stuff is mine and they're still using it. God help them. I don't know why. Because now I realize, like after I've looked back on it, it's like, oh boy, I hope they fixed these things. Actually, I should call some folks over there, see if they fixed them. But yeah, so I spent most of my time on the retail side at Fidelity, a little bit in defined benefits, which is the retirement funds, and fixed income, which is sort of pensions and so on, a little bit in the systems group, but mainly retail. And then my healthcare client here in town was Blue Cross Blue Shield, the landmark building over here that's got the good food down the basement, which they didn't have when I was there. It's like timing's everything. And Blue Cross is, you'll hear stories of Blue Cross in here. I still hate them. That industry is just so disgusting. Like when you get in and you see just how dirty it all is and just the disgusting things they do to take your money. It's why healthcare is so effing expensive here in this country, I think I know. Actually, that gig ended with, that consulting gig ended with me writing a letter to my congressman and calling my office and saying, I'm walking out of here. I don't care if you fire me. I'm never coming back here again. And they were cool with that. It's like, whatever. Probably weren't cool with that, but somebody shielded me really well in that situation. So again, I'm a practitioner. I like getting things done. I don't spend a lot of time on theory. I like getting my hands dirty in the code. That's just how I think. So that's why 411 has a 250 person wait list, is people want that. They want that experience. And what I try to do in here is bring some of my experiences from, 40 years in industry, 30 years, 35. Jesus, I'm old. a long time in industry, I try to bring those experiences in here and just just talk about it a little bit so you kind of know what to expect. I've been a manager. What? Oh, let's forget to mute everybody. It's like, what? No, you can't unmute yourself. Screw that. So I bring those stories in just so you can hear, and it's just me, like what I observed when I was working, but I've been at every level. I was this, well, I was the president of a company. There were only 10 of us, publishing company, but I've run companies from that angle. I've been an individual contributor, just a coder, like sweating it out, working on a deadline. I've been a manager. I've done it all. So honestly, it's been a while, but not that long, not that old. And I'm a deadhead, if you couldn't tell. Serious deadhead. And boy, do I miss them this year. As I'm sure you guys miss live music. Like I had this past summer, I think 7 shows I had tickets to all over the place, and all of them canceled. It's horrible. All right, so 411. Let me just pull up a slide. What do I want to do here? Let me show you this. Just some sort of how we're going to run the chorus. I'm trying to get away from Blackboard because Blackboard sucks. Sorry, guys. It does. And I'm going to start pushing everything to Piazza instead. I mean, Piazza has its own issues, but fewer issues than Blackboard, I think. And so if you look on Piazza for the course, and I just refreshed the roster this morning, I'm also teaching 210 this semester. Who knew? Not me up until December. Like in December, it's like, oh, by the way, you're teaching 210 next semester, which I've never taught before. It'll be really interesting. Very, very interesting. I mean, I've taught 210 as systems, right? So I've taught a buttload of courses in C and C++, and I've taught systems courses, and I've taught data structures. So how hard can it be, right? We'll see. And unfortunately, I don't know if any of you guys were enrolled in 412. 412 is my course on the mean stack, which is MongoDB, Node and Express on the back end, and then Angular on the front end. So it's a JavaScript, TypeScript, Mongo, Redis sort of webby application course. So that was actually on the schedule for this semester, along with 101, which I also teach, and I've taught for 5 or 6 years here, for which I wrote the textbook. And we had 200 something kids in that, students. You guys are students, they're kids in 101. A couple hundred kids in there, and both of those courses were canceled like mid-December, so I could teach 210. That's all I'll say about that, because I don't want to go down that rat hole. What? Spencer, updated your OS all the way? What do you mean, man? Spencer, what do you mean? My OS. 412 next fall. Andy, to be honest, it's on the schedule, but I only have one section of 210 on the schedule in the fall. My guess is that 412 is going to drop in the fall. I am teaching it in the summer. If you guys are going to be around, and Andy, if you're around and want in, let me know. Okay. Oh, it's Piazza. 411, right? All right, so here's 411, Piazza on 411. In this resources tab, resources, that's pretty much, that was my skill in presenting this thing. That's all I've learned to do in 20 something years. So the resources tab, and over here you're going to find all sorts of interesting information. For example, the syllabus and the schedule. I'll post homework assignments up here. Lecture notes for each lecture will go up here as well. And it's really hard to see it even in here. So this is today's lecture, and I try to post them the day before. I usually forget, but certainly before the lecture, they'll come up. Often it is just before the lecture they come up. In case you want to take notes on them, they're PDFs. A lot of folks like to annotate them. And you guys, I'm sure, have used Piazza in the past. Any question you have, like, please post to Piazza. We're really short on staff this semester. I essentially have one TF, and that's it. I've got a couple of graders that I'll have to put to work pretty hard, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna say no. So please, like, funnel your questions through Piazza, and that way, Laura Grege is your T. I got to figure out how to pronounce her name properly. Laura Grege is your TF. Really, really good. Like, I'm really looking forward to working with her. I think she's going to be great. Yeah, so use Piazza is the sum of that. And let me just come up over here. BU. Where are we? 411 overheads. I'm getting old. I can't see. Week 0. Yeah, let's do this one. Thinking, working, thinking. Oh my God, I saw the funniest thing on, which sub was it? I go down the Reddit hole, every night. Just sit in my chair and just read Reddit for hours. Oh, Maggie, hi, baby. It's my dog. So there was a great, it must have been on the Programmer Humor sub, really fun. Like, it was an image of somebody, and it was, I'm stuck in VI and I can't get out. And it was like, 486 hours ago or something. And what had happened to this poor person was they had a MacBook Pro with the touch bar. And in most applications, the escape key is mapped on the touch bar and it goes away. Like, it just vanishes. And so if you're in VI and all of a sudden you don't have an escape key, like a physical escape key anywhere on your keyboard, it can cause a little consternation. And what I learned, because you always learn something in the comments on Reddit, right? What I learned was control square bracket. So control this one, stick it right here. So control that sends the same ASCII code as the escape key. And so if you're stuck and don't have a physical escape key, control bracket will get you out of Vim or VI or whatever the devil you're stuck in. All right, good. All right, so what's the 411? I don't need formatting. Let's put just up here. Nice. So what's the 411? I also love dad jokes. Sorry. So 411, it's kind of a weird course. There's like two pieces to the course. One piece is, I'm going to call it theory. There's no math in the course. Just everyone take a breath. There's no math, but the theory of it is understanding how we approach software with kind of an industry kind of angle. So I tried to write the course in a way as like, if I'm a manager, for example, I get a new hire, like, what are the things that I would like for them to know about how we develop software at the company? And these are sort of those things. Like, what are the steps? Like, we do a formal process to create software. There's a reason for it, which I'll talk about endlessly in here. You're going to see it on quizzes like 9 times. It's quality is the word I'm looking for. So we take this process, this formal set of steps, and we do the same ones over and over and over. So every software project that we spin up, we do the same steps. And we do that because it allows us to think about the process itself. So it's not really the software we're interested at that angle. It's the process. Like, how can we improve the process? How can I cut down how much time it takes? How can I improve our testing? The ultimate goal is, how can I create a quality product at the end, and then keep creating quality as I go, because I'm tweaking that process every time. So there's kind of two pieces. You can think of it as sort of management. There's that management process about the steps we take to build software. And by following those steps, we have a better shot at creating something that isn't going to break, is going to be modular and maintainable and all of those things. It'll perform well. And then the next project will be slightly better because we're going to improve the process. So we spent a lot of time talking about process. I also spent some time talking about architecture. Um, the last several years of my career, I was mainly doing architecture level stuff, which is where you guys should aspire to be, because that job is you get to wear the Brooks Brothers suit. We were billing what's $200 an hour or so at our clients, especially Fidelity. I think they were $220 an hour. But you get to wear the fancy suit. You billing, out the wazoo. Back in those days, I hate bragging, but back in those days, I would take off my Brooks Brothers suit and go and park my Jaguar next to my aircraft. Actually, I'll show you the aircraft. It was not that fancy. Let's see, BU, assets, background images, 46 Romeo. Let's see what I got. That aircraft. That's me and my dog. That was a sweet little 4-seater Beechcraft. We flew that everywhere. So it was a lot of fun. Here she is sitting in it. Oh, really? You're going to do that to me? I was just there. I got to show you. Background images, 46 Romeo. Here she is in there. Oh, it's sideways. I am. This one. There's Maggie in the plane. She was a good flyer. She loved to fly. She's old now. She's going to be 13 in a couple of months, which is really, really old for a yellow lab. So we're sort of babying her these days. She's doing okay, though. She's got a little arthritis. She's doing all right. It's not Cameron. Yeah, English lad. I'm looking over here like Cameron's up there. Like, yeah, Cameron, English lad. It's a sweet girl. Maggie. It's Maggie the dog. There's also like terminology, and it's almost like industry slang. And I use a lot of it. And if you're not an English speaker as your first language, sometimes that can be tough because A, I'm wearing a mask. B, I mumble a lot. C, I don't talk that loudly. And D, it's a lot of slang. So I'll just say stuff like, oh, we need to push that to prod. It's like, what does that mean? Push to prod means that we're kind of at the end of the process and we're going to move our code into a production environment. But you're not on the job, like you're not going to say, hey, Frank, are we ready to move that software to the production environment? Like, no, I say, dude, let's push to prod right now. And so that's how we talk. And I want you to hear some of that. So you're just in a little better shape when you get to work, And I will also say that this course is really great for interviewing skills because we talk about the same things they're going to talk about on the interviews, especially high-level stuff like process, teamwork, tools, that kind of thing. So that's another part. I know I'm off. I'm on slide 1, and I'm already way off topic. What can I do? It's another facet of 411, and it can be really fun and really scary at the same time. You get to do a team project. There are a couple of reasons I keep doing this. Sorry, it's the beard. I usually don't wear a beard, so here's what I look like, by the way. I usually don't wear a beard. I wear a little Van Dyke thing, but COVID, I've been home for 6 weeks. So the project, the team project, last semester we did it in teams of, I think 6. We had 20 teams of 6. There are 120 in the course. And that worked out relatively well. Every semester I try a few more, like we used to do teams of 3, but that's when I had 30 people in the course. And the course just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Slowly, because I keep telling them no, but they keep adding students. So teams of 5 or 6, it's open-ended. Like I actually, at some level I do, but I kind of don't care what you guys do for your project. you have to pitch the project. You'll pitch the projects, I think, week 3. Like you come up with a couple of ideas in your teams, and then you present those ideas, and I and Laura look at those, and we'll give you thumbs up, thumbs down. It's almost always thumbs up. But things like, what was a fun project? Like a really common thing is go to Twitter and grab a user's timeline. So you get all their tweets, send all of those up to IBM Watson for sentiment analysis to see if they're sad or happy or whatever. So you get that data back, and then take that information and push it to Spotify and create a playlist to move them off of that mood. Like, oh, I'm sad based on my tweets, give me a happy playlist off of Spotify. So that kind of thing. And actually that is sort of gives you an idea of the scope of these projects. You have to correlate two or more data streams from public APIs. An API is an application programming interface, basically the way we get data over the internet. So you got to pull in some data based on some other data. So it's like, oh, they're sad. I'm going to use that information to do this in a sequential sort of way. You're going to learn how to do single sign-on with OAuth, all those little sign-on with Twitter, sign-on with Google things. Like that's a requirement for the project, so you'll learn how to do that. We're going to do caching with Redis. Yeah, you'll probably do caching with Redis and have a Mongo database as well. No, I can't say that because that's the second part, which is I don't care what technologies you use. I mean, I think Redis and Mongo and everything, because I do a lot of work in TypeScript these days, and so those are kind of my tool set. I guess I'm in C these days now. Oh, thanks. It's not a bad beard. It's funny. The beard on this side goes down, on this side it goes sideways, so I can only like present one side at a time. So it's a fairly complicated project when you look at it. Like if you look at the architecture and all the moving pieces, but it's your project. I don't tell you what to do, and so I think it's more fun because you're doing something that you want to do. We've had dating apps. We've had a real common one is what food do I have in my refrigerator? What can I make out of that? You know, and how many calories am I going to eat and all that stuff. Those aren't my favorite. My favorites are like music sorts of things. Actually, somebody, I don't know if it was in like a student in here or not, or a team in here, like they invented or their development effort was moving a playlist from Spotify to Apple Music or back and forth. And I used it. I was like, I wanted to do exactly that. It's like, oh, this is really cool. It's like, oh, yeah, I'll use your app to do that. And it worked great. And then later on, I saw that there was like a new app out on the intertubes to do just that. And I kind of wondered if it was the same folks. No idea where I am. Yeah, so tools, languages, frameworks, like you're just going to get to play with a lot of stuff. Not during lecture. The lecture is the really boring, dry part where I'm just blabbing about some god-awful process. The fun part is the teamwork, I think. It's also the scariest part. I mentioned scary. And the reason for that is it's really hard to work in teams. For example, the reason I was a consultant and, president of company and, just sort of an independent worker all my life is I don't work well with others. I don't know why. I'm such a nice guy. Why? I don't know. I just don't enjoy playing with others. And so I went sort of that lone wolf way. But most jobs, especially these days, most jobs require you to work in teams. And part of the interview process is they're trying to figure out how well are you going to fit into our team. Like, frankly, these days, there's 100 applicants for every job. And once you get past that first interview, you've got the technical chops. Like there's not a lot of question about, can you do the work? From that, there's just such a large pool. So the next rounds of interviews really are about, can I stand sitting next to this person for 40 hours a week? Like, you're going to have to sit and interact and be in a team every single day. And if you hire somebody that just doesn't work well in a team, like, that person isn't going to succeed. And so that latter part of the interview process, a lot of it is, how well do you work in teams? How do you approach conflict? In fact, that's a question you're going to get on an interview if you make it to the third or fourth round. It's like, oh, a team member is doing this. How do you resolve that conflict? Well, here you get to practice that, because the teams aren't perfect. You're scattered all over the world, just like we are today. In dev, like, even when I was like doing serious dev, a lot of stuff was being done offshore, just outsourcing stuff. And so a lot of times your team is not co-located. This gives you practice in that as well. So I think it really like helps you figure out personally how you feel about teamwork, how you handle conflict. Am I a leader? Am I a follower? Like, what role am I most comfortable in? And then you're not like learning that on the job, which can be stressful, I think. So this is the place to play and make mistakes and, explore all of those roles. That's one of the fun parts of the course, I think. Oh, now I can read them. All right, so I talked about quality. Oh, by the way, what time is it anyway? It's 11:34. What do we go to, like 12:15? 12:15, yeah, sweet. And full disclosure, like, I'll probably try to end the lecture 5 minutes early every lecture, because I have got to hoof it down to GSU for my next class. Used to have to hoof it down to CGS from here, so it's an improvement. Actually, when I had to do that, I would just grab one of these blue bikes and just, it's like the Wizard of Oz. All right, so all these things, like, these are going to be like undercurrents of the course. You'll learn fairly soon that these are non-functional requirements. We'll talk about requirements a lot in here. Anything that ends in an ility, like reusability, securability, testability, performability, all those things they're not really the core of the project itself. Like, it's not the business problem we're trying to solve, it's how it solves that problem. We want it to be secure and maintainable and testable, and all of those things. Those are an important part of the process. And honestly, like, people think about, oh, I'm going to be a software engineer. Like, what does that mean? Oh, I'm going to code all day. That's really not the case. Like, in most places I was in, actual coding, like actually sitting down to do some coding, we do a couple of days a week, I guess. Like, most of the time was spent researching, working on requirements, documentation, meetings out the wazoo. The actual coding part was, I won't say it was irrelevant, but it was a smaller part of the job. So the bigger part of the job really was understanding, how do we get to the coding part, and doing all the work to get to that point. And by the way, most of the stuff I'm talking about in this class, I'm talking larger companies. So if it's just 2 or 3 people, like, my company, we had 10 people. We didn't follow a lot of process, because I'm not crazy about process. But it's just, a couple of us. So if we needed to do something quickly, it's like, oh, just do that and not go through the 9 steps to get to that point. Process. It's all about process. Process. That's annoying. Make that, let's make it a touch smaller. It's still center. I don't care. So process, my God, I hate process. I hate process. I hate being told what to do. Another reason I'm kind of a lone wolf kind of person. I don't like being told what to do. I don't like following process at all. It just really grates me. However, I'm here to tell you that at every level, every role I've had, I pretty much religiously follow process. And the reason is that I know in my heart that it works. Using a process to do something works. And listen, companies are not stupid. Like, let me ask you this. Why do you think a company does a software project? What is the single word result that they're looking for when they do a software project? It's one word. It starts with an M and it rhymes with honey. It's money. Companies are in business to make money. And of course there are exceptions, right? There's, I can't think of an exception. But even a nonprofit, they have to earn money, right? To maintain their business. Like, we do projects to make money, end of story. Like, literally end of story. There's always going to be like stuff you have to do. There's maintenance projects, there's regulatory stuff. If you're at Fidelity, there's going to be SEC stuff that you got to do because new rules come down all the time. So there's always like that sort of incremental work that's, kind of your base. But real software projects that you're spinning up and and staffing up, it's done to make money, end of story. The corollary to that is the more projects that you can do, the more money you're going to make in a given period of time. Well, this will sort of bubble up several times in this course. It pays to figure out a way to produce software in such a way that I'm doing it as efficiently as possible, and I'm producing a product in the end that I don't have to go back and rework. Because rework is astoundingly expensive. It's the most expensive thing you can do to a piece of software, is go back and have to change something in it because you screwed it up to begin with. You guys will experience that in your projects, I'm sure. It's very painful. And so the solution almost universally that companies have come up with is apply a software development process to our projects. That allows us to pipeline as many projects as we possibly can, because we know they're running as efficiently as they can. And that's going to hit our bottom, it's going to hit the top line. That's the reason. If it didn't make sense, if process didn't work, nobody would use it because it would be a competitive disadvantage. Process is a competitive advantage. And I actually spent not a huge number of years, 3 or 4 years. I've done a lot of things in my life. I was director of marketing research in the enterprise computing space at Aberdeen Consulting. And I had a small team there, and we did research into, I'll just give you an example. You can kind of get the idea of what we did. So we would go in and look at what's a problem that companies have. One problem is they've got old machines and they want to do new things with them. Like, oh, I want to add a web interface, but what I have is a mainframe. So how do you approach that architecturally? How do you put that together? Well, I should go through migration and such in one of the lectures. And so we would interview a couple hundred companies. Like, do you have a project of this kind? Like, what problems did you see? How did you solve this problem? And so on. Like, we do a deep dive interview with all these companies. And then we go back and apply analytics to figure out who the better companies were. So in that market space, who were the top 10, for example, or the top 5% maybe. And, maybe it was revenue or market penetration or whatever it happened to be was our metric. We'd figure out who the best were, and then circle back and figure out, is there something in common that these better companies are doing to approach this kind of project that would be an indicator that it's helping them be a leader in that market space? So that was the research that we did. And it was a lot of process. Like, it always came out, it's like, oh, we use this process. And sometimes it was architecture or tools, but mainly it was process. And then we try to sell those white papers. What a weird, it was a weird business. So we do that. Like my clients there were like HP, IBM, Compaq when they were around, like Sybase, Oracle, big, corporate clients. So I'd call up the marketing director at IBM. What's his name? Tom or something? It's been too long. So I'll say it's Tom. It's like, hey, Tom, it's Perry down at Aberdeen. Hey, we got this great report coming out. It turns out that, the top 5%, the market leaders in this space are using WebSphere, which is kind of a middleware product, enterprise middleware product. They're using WebSphere to mitigate issues they're seeing moving mainframes into web environments. And for $25,000, we'll put your logo on that report, and then you can give it out to your clients. So basically sold access to the report, and they could use it as a marketing tool. And 25K in a marketing budget, especially at IBM, is like, oh, 20, oh, here you go. I just had something in my pocket. And they had to spend the money. So those were easy sells, except when we got to the second part, which was, so full disclosure, Tom, like, you know how we work, like we need to maintain our independence, our independent view at least, like we can't actually name your product in the paper. We talk about that kind of product, but we can't actually say IBM WebSphere anywhere in the paper. And you get a little bit of silence. And then we'd say, oh, and by the way, there are 5 spots for logos on this report. HP and Oracle have already bought. And so your logo is going to be next to Oracle's logo when the report is published. And about that point, you'd hear click because they didn't want to share space. But it always came down to process. Always came down to process. We'll talk about architectures. I love architecture. And I realized sort of as you get older, you start doing some deep introspection. It's like, why do I like architecture so much? I think it's because you don't have to do that much work. So when you're thinking at that level, it's a lot of big block diagrams. So I might say, oh, we're looking at the architecting and data portion of this application. Like, how's that going to look? I'll just draw a box and write data access layer, and then just draw a circle below it says data. That's the architecture. We're done. It took like 2 minutes. But we talk a lot about architecture in here because I want you to see all the different ways we can put stuff together. I mean, I have my favorite ways to do it, and so those kind of come through. I'm a big fan of decoupled architectures where the pieces are independent from one another, and we put abstraction layers in front of each piece, and then just send messages back and forth. So you'll see architectures like that in like a message bus system, the stuff you're going to be doing in here, actually that's one of the requirements, is your project has to be a decoupled architecture with an API sitting in between each of the pieces. All these words will make sense at some point if they don't already. So we talk a lot about architecture, and especially about the trade-offs, because you never ever get a chance to build that perfect system. There's always going to be some compromise you have to make for any reasons. Like, oh, security is, one of our largest requirements. Now I've got to rethink the architecture because, maybe my original design didn't have a lot of security built into it and I need to bolt some on or whatever. But everything is a trade-off. And so I'd like to talk about trade-offs as we go. So we understand, how do we think about software? How do we make those decisions about going this way or that way? What are the issues? What are the pitfalls and so on? Constraints, everything is a constraint. So that's architecture. What's it look like? And then the approaches are more kind of a specific implementation of that. So I can build an architecture, for example, actually a perfect example, this will come up again, so I'll just be brief on it. It was at Wellington Management, just down the street on State Street here in town. We were designing actually a very large system for them. And I spent probably a month on that architecture, doing interviews, talking to end users and all the management bits and so on. So I laid out this big architecture for the system. Going into the meeting, as we were consultants, so we had to present that architecture. We were bidding for the job, basically. So I went in the meeting knowing that my implementation that was in my head was not the same one that they wanted. And I pushed hard for my implementation because I thought it was a good one. But all the time, it's like, I know they're going to want this instead. And so the architecture didn't change. Coming out of that meeting, so coming out of the meeting, I knew going in that they were not going to approve my pitch, but it was close. Like it was close to what they needed. And there was a personal thing. One of the CIO there was an Oracle guy, and I knew he wanted to use Oracle, and that was a big part of the architecture, and I didn't. So I knew that going in, and at the end of that meeting, and again, I'll talk about that meeting again later on, but at the end of the meeting, my response was to just lean back and say, all right, so what I'm hearing is that we're really close. Like we were agreeing on principle on a lot of stuff. There's some architectural things that we need to take a look at. So I think we can come around to a compromise that'll make everybody happy on this. If you'll give me 2 weeks, we'll go back, we'll rework some of these pieces, and then we'll meet again, at the end of the month and talk it through again. What I really was doing was buying us 2 weeks of billing, because we knew that was going to be the outcome of that meeting, and so we'd already done that work. Like the new architecture, I had it in my briefcase. But you ask, right? It's like, hey, can I get 2 more weeks of billing out of these people? You ask, and they say, yeah, that's no problem. Then you add a 0 to that project because apparently money's not an issue. And we just went and golfed for a couple of weeks. But the reason that worked was the architecture didn't change, actually. I changed a couple of words in the boxes, but the boxes were the same. That was the architecture. It was, how is information going to flow through this application? The implementation was the approach. They wanted to use Oracle tables as ways to move data around through the app. I wanted to use a message bus to do it. All I had to do was, on the line between the database and the first component, instead of message bus, I scratched that out and wrote Oracle table, and that was it. The implementation was different, but the architecture was the same. And that's the beauty of architecture and thinking about projects that way, is that you really get to the essence of what is it we're doing, how is it we're going to do it, but at an abstract level. So I'm not thinking implementation details yet. And I'll yell at you guys a couple of times about details, like I don't want to hear details. Oh, we're going to use PHP. No, I don't want to hear PHP at all. Please don't do your projects in PHP. I've done a lot of PHP coding. It's just horrible. But at this stage, like early days in your projects, you don't know. You don't know enough to pick a language. You don't know enough to pick a platform. Or we're going to use Node. We're going to use Flask and Python. No, that's not what we're focusing on. We're instead focusing on, what does it do? How is it going to do it? And then we go and implement it in some language. So the language is almost irrelevant. And there's always special cases. Some languages are really good at some things. Like, God help me, in my my electrical engineering curriculum, I took a course in APL, the programming language APL, which stands for a programming language. And I took it from the guy who wrote the language. I don't know if you've done that before, but it was horrific. APL is actually fairly popular in engineering because it's really pithy. It's all in Greek. Literally, you have to have a Greek keyboard to do it, and there's no keywords. It's just Greek symbols. So if I want to do a matrix multiplication or something, it's like a theta. But that's all you have to write, just theta. And now you've got a matrix multiplication happening. So in those situations, like, solving problems in APL, there's a certain class of projects or problems that it's really good at. I would do them all the same and just assume I was using APL. But for the most of the time, we don't assume a language. We'll learn about tool chains in here. God, there's all sorts of, holy crow. So I gotta talk faster, huh? Sorry. We'll learn tool chains. I love tools. It's a big project, right, that you're gonna be working on. So you're gonna need tools. We're going to use GitHub. Actually, I might move you all to GitLab instead of GitHub, just so we keep the stuff local. We have an instance of GitLab here at BU. Actually, I take that back. I don't have. I've got one for CS411. Think about how that looks. We're not there yet. You'll be doing some testing, so you need frameworks for testing. In JavaScript, they probably use Mocha or Chai to do that. You know, project management tools, if you're interested, just collaboration tools that keeping everybody on the same page. You'll end up using a lot of tools, maybe things you haven't used before, which I think is really valuable too. And then I've talked about the project a little bit, so I'm just going to skip through some of these. I will say this about, I'll say a couple of things about the project because these reminded me. One is that we'll do, I usually have time for a lecture toward the end of the course on deploying to the cloud. And a lot of teams like to set up an AWS server or, you know, one of the other companies, but AWS is one I use. So you set up an instance on AWS in their cloud and deploy your code there and run it from there. It's really handy for your database component because you want one set of data for everyone on the team. And so it's handy just to put that database up in the cloud and then everyone can connect to the database on AWS. What did that remind me of, that AWS thing? AWS, EC2 stuff. Oh, yeah. So toolchain stuff. 2 slides back. Another thing I'm going to actually add this to the course this semester. I want to talk about DevOps, DEVOPS, DevOps. Developer operations, I guess, is what it stands for. It's basically a set of tools and techniques that companies use to shorten up the development cycle by letting developers do more of the work that was traditionally done by other people. So like QA, or you might have a staging team or something, basically managing more of the project yourself. So for example, Docker. I don't know, you guys use Docker at all? Docker and containers and so on. I'm pretty sure that'll be a requirement of the course, that you use Docker containers to manage your application. But it's really fun. Like Docker is amazing. It essentially gives you a running either operating system or application in a sandbox container that is basically protecting the operating system from that app. It's self-contained. You poke holes in it to get things in and out of it, but it's kind of its own thing in the operating system. In 2.10, for example, we run a Linux instance in a Docker container so that we all have the same coding environment. So we'll do some Docker stuff. We'll have a lecture on how to set all that up, which I think is fun. Exams, quizzes. What time is it? Tons of time. There's no final. No final exam. So 30% of your grade is no final exam. I need to fix this. There is a midterm. I'll adjust these percentages so we're all clear on what they're going to be. There is a midterm exam. The exams, because of COVID, are done online. They're done on Gradescope, and it's over a period of, I think I usually give it 32 hours. So there's like a 2-hour window. Once you open it, you got 2 hours to finish, but any time during that 32 hours or so, just because we're just all over the world right now. So there is a midterm. You'll have weekly quizzes, and this number will go up for quizzes. So there's a quiz about every week. It's 5 or 6 questions just on the topics we talked about that week. Again, done on done on Gradescope, and within a window. So all of the assessments are done online, and you can take it, during a certain period of time. The team work is worth 20% of your grade. I really need to rejigger these. And then we do something called a peer review at the end. This is every person on the team evaluates every other person on the team anonymously. And it's your chance, if Fred over here just sat on his ass and didn't do anything the entire semester, it's your chance as a team to say, you know what, Fred really sucked on this. Like, he didn't help at all. In fact, he hindered us. And I've actually seen cases. There was one case last semester where somebody's grade went from an A to an A minus because they got a really, really poor peer assessment. They just didn't do any work on the team. And so that's the buffer of, you need to do some work on the team, or, it's like a half a grade score there. All right, so I will take an action item to adjust these and post corrected numbers for the percentages. I do drop the lowest quiz score. So if you can't make it, you're, God forbid, where's some wood? There's no wood anymore. God forbid you're ill or something, you got sort of one free. Piazza, COVID. This actually doesn't apply because we have plenty of room, I think. What else? Lumen number seats. I think we've got plenty of seats. We actually have 15 in here-ish. There's another 15 seats on the other side. So you guys who are online, if you want to come, there's room. Just be aware that this room is set up really weirdly. Like it's almost like a second classroom over there, but there's not an easy way. Maybe these things are slaved. Maybe the screens are slaved. I can't say that word anymore. It's gonna be hard to do. But anyway, if you want to come to class, I think there's a seat for you. So you don't have to worry about signing up for a seat or anything like that. my second 210 section, I believe I have 9 people who said they're coming in person. It's in Morse, which is a 700 person auditorium. Like, why? I'll be so happy when we're done with this pandemic. Yeah, you got to wear masks all the time. Be kind to each other. I will say, like, please don't come up after class close to me and ask a question, because I'll back away in horror. Better to email me, or even better on Piazza. I'm in a much better mood these days, by the way, since the election. I actually got called in. I got called into the dean's office twice last semester for complaints about my political speeches in classes. And my argument was, like, this is college. Like, where else you can be talking politics, right? It's like, for God's sakes, like, we need to get, why aren't you out in the streets protesting? Was usually the gist of my discussion. So yeah, I get called in quite a bit to the dean. Office hours. So Laura's going to have office hours. I'll have a couple of hours each week, and we'll post those. We'll post them on Piazza. Anywhere you see Blackboard in here, sub Piazza. What else? Yeah, the guiding principle. I wrote this at the beginning of the COVID planning over here, but this is still true. I don't want you in groups. I mean, it's bad enough being in here, because I hear there's a couple of new variants that are much more contagious. And now they're saying, I think CDC even said, oh yeah, like brief intermittent contact can be enough to catch this new strain. Oh my God, I went on and on. Yeah, your team meetings will be just done online. Almost done. Tools, yeah, we'll talk about tools later. You'll be using a lot of these. Postman, I love Postman. I don't know if you've used Postman before. What a great tool that is. You'll see several demos of that coming up. Languages, again, I don't care what languages you guys use in your projects, it's up to you. And that's actually one of the first things you got to deal with as an individual. Like, you guys are all really smart, or you wouldn't be here. And so you got like 5 or 6 really smart people who are probably pretty driven, all coming together to form a team, and everyone's got a great idea. And so part of the challenge is like compromising and coming up with a single project for the team. And language too. Contacting me, I'm all over the place. I blog. I haven't written anything for about a year. That's how blogs go. You know, you start out, you're excited about it, and then they just sort of, you forget about it. That's my email address. You can, I tweet here, Perry D Bucks, which is also my Reddit handle. You can see what's on my mind. Usually just ranting about something. You're welcome to call me. That's a Google Voice number. Be aware that Google records and extract keywords from those. So they're analyzing any message that you leave me. I don't even post my cell phone number because it goes directly to voicemail. I don't answer phones. I just don't see the point. If you want to talk to me, if you know me well enough, then you can text me. If you don't know me well enough and you want to talk to me, it's like, why would I want to talk to you? Like, I don't. And so everything goes to voicemail. And eventually I get to them. Like once a week I check voicemail. You're better off sending me a text. Privacy, AKA Google Mail and Google just analyzing everything. You're welcome to use Signal. I'm a Signal user. Perry D at bu.edu is my way to get to me on Signal. Don't use anything else. For God's sakes, don't use WhatsApp. Don't use anything Facebook makes, please. If you want to use encryption, this is my public key. That's the fingerprint for it. You can download that key from any of the key servers. And because of the way encryption works, and because of the way governments attack encryption, we assume that the keys that are published like this have been broken. So those are compromised keys. And so the way I approach this is you can send me an encrypted message using that key to establish contact. Then we will immediately generate a new key pair and use some back channel, hopefully on paper or maybe voice, to transmit a new key. And that new key gets used for that conversation. And then when we're done with that conversation, we destroy the key. So that's how you handle that. That's how I handle that. And that's it. There's Maggie the dog. We're a little early today. You guys have any questions online? You got any questions? What, Spencer? Spencer asked, do you get to choose team members? You do not. So the teams are assigned at random, and there's no appeal. What I do try to do is, for folks who are located overseas, I try to group you together a little bit, so it's just easier to communicate. But you're probably going to have at least one team member who is not co-located, probably not even on the same continent. Yeah, and every semester I get, somebody or more than one person is like, Professor Don, I'm like, Billy smells and he doesn't like me and I don't want to be on the team and I want to be on a new team. And my response is always the same: cowboy up. It's like when you're on a job, if you go to your boss and say, Billy smells, I don't want to be on a team with him, your ass is fired. I would fire you. It's like, you can't work on a team? Are you kidding me? Like, you're out of here. I'll find somebody who can. The questions. Are teams based on lab sections? Cameron asks. Yeah, roughly. That's where I start, and then I adjust slightly depending on where I think you are in the world. Nicholas asked, are quizzes during labs or lectures, and when is the first one? The first one will be released on Friday, covering Friday's material, real short one. They're done online, on Gradescope, and you've got basically a day to take it. So you open up the quiz, they're timed. So if the quiz is an hour long, it's 11, what time is it? It's 12:06 or something here. You've got until 1:06 to finish it. If I opened it up at 11, I'd have till 12 and so on. How do you recommend students take notes? Well, the way I like to do is I just sort of sit back and close my eyes and just sort of let the words just flow over me. I don't know if that works for you or not. And to be honest, that's the way I would just, if I could teach that way, just like you guys come in a couple times a week and just sit around and we just talk for an hour or so, like no quizzes, no tests, just let's just talk about stuff. I would love that. Yeah, question. Oh no. It was like, it was a semester or two ago. It was somebody was passing around on Reddit. I follow a sub called Professors, and somebody had hit the little on Zoom. You can raise your hand, get this little hand raise icon, and so some student like raised their hand, and the professor called them, and they said, "Oh, I was just stretching." I love that. It's locked is the issue. I'm registered lecture, not lab. Yeah, Benjamin, send me email and I'll hook you up, man. I'll even get you a lab section. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Oh man.
Sorry.
So we're like this close. Yeah, what?
About the office hours,
Yeah.
if we can't make them, would you be willing to schedule for the things, or how should we ask you about that?
So the question in the room was, if the scheduled office hours don't work with your schedule and you need to talk, yeah, just send me a note or pop something on Piazza. Either Laura or I will help you out. Oh, no one, if anyone wants to join a group me, here's the link. So cool, Bernard has a link for a group me if you want to grab that. Don't use it to cheat. Anything else? Bueller? Sweet, you made it through the first one. I will see you all on Thursday. You guys too. And thanks so much for coming. Appreciate it. It's actually so much nicer to have people in the room. So much nicer. It's Bernie 10. Where is that? I guess I don't have it. Somewhere I've got a picture of me teaching in Sci last semester with one student in 500 seats. Insane. All right, I gotta shut this down, huh? Stop sharing. Hear that a lot. And let's see, stop recording. Where's my recording? Stop.